educated on your Second Amendment rights. Welcome to 2 full hours of Gun Owners Radio. Your hosts, Dave Stahl, Joe Germisi, and Michael Schwartz will teach you about firearms, self-defense, and the laws that affect your rights to keep and bear arms. Visit gunownersradio.com with questions to learn how to become a sponsor of Gun Owners Radio and get involved. Together, we will win. Now here's your hosts, Dave Stahl, Joe Germisi, and Michael Schwartz on The Answer San Diego.
All right, folks. Hey, welcome to Gun Owners Radio, FM 96.1, AM 1170.
The Answer.
Hey, well, if you have legal matters that involve firearms, then you need to call Attorney John Dillon. If you have questions about red flag laws, gun registration, gun transportation, or maybe you just need to know that your guns are California compliant, call our trusted firearms attorney, John Dillon. John Dillon specializes in California gun laws, 760-642-7150, or you can visit his website at dillonlawgp.com. Hey, before we jump into the show, next Saturday, 2/26/22, Painted Gorge in Ocotillo Wells are going to have a really cool event with San Diego Off-Road Coalition, and they're going to do a desert cleanup from 8 to 11 and a shooting session from 11 to 1, and then the BLM is going to do a hike.
There's a weird,
I thought there was going to be a shooting out there.
Weird pause, Dave. Weird pause.
Yeah, so
and a shooting session.
Well, I didn't write session.
That's like the Simpsons had. You remember that bit on the Simpsons where he goes, Ronald Reagan dyes his hair.
Yeah,
you just did that.
So if anybody out there listening that shoots and does off road, just go to San Diego Off-Road or SCORC.org. You can sign up.
Good organization.
Yeah.
Prize winner, Rob Fernandez. You have a Gun Owners Radio prize pack coming your way, which includes stickers, patches, and other goodies. Congratulations. If you're listening and you want to win, join the Gun Owners Radio newsletter. Just go to gunownersradio.com, gunownersradio.com, and sign up for our newsletter. And they'll enter you into a pool of folks, and you might win a prize. Jackson, are you getting the newsletter?
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's the easiest way to answer that.
There you go. There you go. If you don't want to sign up for it now after hearing that glowing review, I don't know what'll do it for you. So what's up, gentlemen? Joe, how's it going, man?
It's going great.
How did your first aid class go yesterday?
Went very well, I think. Got a lot of great feedback from it. So got a lot of great ideas for how to evolve from there. But it seemed to go real well. Everybody was real happy with it.
What was the emphasis?
The emphasis there was trauma. So what we did with this one, and the idea of the class was to give you some skills, or to give people some skills on what to do until the medics get there. Be that the first 10 minutes, or if that's hours away. So we started out with a basic patient assessment. What would you do when you come on the scene survey, assessing the patient in a trauma situation, and then we went on to do basic trauma stuff. Broken bones, lacerations, chest injuries.
You gonna do another one?
Splints.
Is this gonna be a regular thing?
Yeah, and I think what we want to do, because we did this one for 4 hours, so trying to keep it in chunks of time where it's good for people, it's useful, I can get enough information out to them. So based on the feedback, I think what we're gonna do is a part 1, a part 2, because there were things I didn't cover for time, constraints, and thought about doing an 8-hour class, but then you got to deal with lunch. It takes up an entire day, and with my schedule now, I don't work, I'm working all this week all day long, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but then I'll have all of the following week off. And, for people that are working Monday through Friday, week after week after week, Saturday and Sunday is precious.
Yeah.
So doing an 8-hour class is a little bit, challenging. You got to want it. So I think breaking it up into a part 1, a part 2, and just spreading it out that way and keeping them to 4-hour classes is the way we're going to go. So we got a trauma version, part 1, part 2. Then we had the same thing with medical emergencies, dealing with, the same idea, dealing with heart attack, stroke, that kind of stuff.
Did you guys, would you have like 30, 40 people, something like that?
We had 20, so we limited it to 20. Yeah, because there's a...
That's a Glock store, so thank you, Glock store, for
that was, it's a great
supporting.
facility, and it's very cool that they support us like that.
Jackson loves Glock store.
And yeah, the thing with limiting it to 20 people is good because there's a lot of doing the hands-on stuff. You got to come up with splints and bandages, and there's a lot of material to come up with.
Yeah.
So it works out perfectly about that size.
Did you guys see the press conference with the governor on Friday?
No.
Yeah, he came down to San Diego to bash gun owners live. So
Did you do a good job?
he did a great job of being anti-gun. Yeah,
Sure.
So the whole thing, and it was actually all over the news. You can go to our website, go to our Facebook page, or check out our email, and you'll see the clips on it. But they reached out to San Diego County gun owners because there's a couple things. He was particularly critical of I forget the manufacturer, but it was a JR-15, and it's a 22 caliber AR.
I saw that.
Yeah. And so he
with a little cartoon picture on it.
Little cartoon, and he was, oh my gosh, he was clutching his pearls at how horrible the idea that they're selling assault weapons to children.
Well, that side of the spectrum there has no sense of humor. You can't laugh at anything there.
Well, all they're doing is, it's a red herring. They're just trying to, they really don't have a case.
Well, they're not going to go after the root cause of the problem.
No, and they can't really explain what they're trying to do because what they're trying to do doesn't make any sense. So they have to go with these emotional pleas. So all the news folks that contacted me were like, "Oh my, all these. What do you think about all these gun manufacturers that are trying to sell guns to kids?" Well, wait. And the first thing, and a lot of times, so they just set the premise, right? They just we just accept that as fact. Well, wait. Let's back this up. What exactly are they doing? And so you get to explain.
At least they're calling you.
Well, yeah, it was wonderful. It was actually, of course, we've done.
Because other media outlets that's it, run with it.
Yeah, no, we've done a really good job of forming relationships with the local news folks. So when something like this happens, we're the first people they call, which is great.
Right.
And they, all of them said, yeah, okay, great. They let us set the story straight, which is great. It was I still think it's a huge mistake over the past 20, 30 years that gun organizations, said, hey, we're going to ignore the liberal media.
Can't do it.
We're going to ignore the liberal media. Okay, fine. Well, what that means is that you're going to let them say whatever they want, unopposed, uncorrected. And we decided, you know what? We're going to concentrate on engaging with local media. So we do it all the time.
And they like it.
I think they do,
Because they want to hear, the true media want to hear both sides of the story.
They want to hear both sides of the story. But even the media that isn't so true, let's say that they're not exactly after the truth.
You haven't gotten a call from CNN yet.
No. But the ones, their big motivation is they like friction.
Right.
So if they can call up one side and get a bunch of talking points and call up the other side and get a bunch of counterpoints, they like that. They like.
But if one side talks, the other side doesn't, it's not not worthy.
Right. So
which is what
good.
they do to conservative media.
The
left will never call in. I mean, you'll never see Pelosi on Fox.
Good. You're probably right. I don't know. I don't even know. I don't watch Fox anymore.
No, but I'm just saying
or CNN
well, that was the only conservative station I could think of.
Yeah.
Outside of Newsmax.
I guess that's true. Although I don't know. It seems like some of the more conservative op-ed guys, like Hannity and Tucker, and some of the ones that you think of, are more likely to put on a left-leaning politician than the left. Like,
well, they invite him all the time.
Yeah, Rachel Maddow is less likely to have a Republican than Hannity is to have a Democrat.
She had to take a break.
Yeah, I heard that.
She can't do it.
I heard she went on sabbatical or whatever.
Yeah, wore her out. She's totally burned up. She can't. Yeah, she's just crushed.
I don't know what I'm going to not watch then, because I used to not watch her. Now I
I
can't not watch her because she's not on. That's too bad.
Hey, folks, don't touch that dial. We have one of the greatest firearms and self-defense instructors on the planet. He's also an author. Massad Ayoob is going to be calling in.
Massad Ayoob is next.
See? He does as good as I do. Self-defense and emergencies can happen to anyone, and there's no guarantee that the justice system will be on your side. Make sure you are protected for the legal battle after your self-defense battle. While you protect your family and property, U.S. Law Shield is here to defend you 24/7, 365 days a year with a comprehensive self-defense coverage at an affordable price. Bad guys don't take days off, and neither does our coverage. Hey, listeners, you can get a free t-shirt when you use the code GunOwnersRadio. Sign up today. Go to uslawshield.com.
All right, Massad Ayoob, the GOAT, the greatest of all time, American firearms and self-defense trainer, Second Amendment advocate, handgun editor of Guns Magazine, and president of the Second Amendment Foundation, is our guest. Massad, are you there?
How are you doing?
How are you? Good. It's so great to hear from you. How is everything?
Doing well. Wife just got home from a pistol match. Sorry, I had a better way to spend Sunday.
Good. How did your pistol match go?
It's great. We went with the guns. The thing was smoothly. The range around it was locked, not shock. And the club did a wonderful job. I think it went smoothly.
You know what? We're going to have to ask you a favor of you, my friend. Can you hang up and call back because you're breaking in and out really
Yeah.
bad.
Tell you what, I'll try all on our.
All right,
Okay.
super. That
All right.
sounds great. Thanks, buddy.
So those of you who haven't heard of Massad, he is kind of he was one of the first really big like published trainers, somebody that really kind of, one of the first that really fleshed out kind of the art and science of firearms training. What did you say? Am I putting that right, Joe?
Yeah, and even well beyond that, what he's really well known for too is his expertise in the court. And he's a well-known expert witness and has been for a very long time. He's got several books out about the use of the use of deadly force and various self-defense things. So pretty much a legend in the gun community.
He is.
All
Massad,
right.
you back?
You're back?
Yes, I hope the connection is better.
That is
Much
much better.
better.
Hey, right before you came on in our last segment, we were talking about media. And, we've done a good job. San Diego County Gun Owners has done a really good job of connecting with local media and being a source for media. And I made the point that I think for about the last 20, 30 years that a lot of the gun organizations have taken the wrong approach. And, now it's a big blanket statement. Some have done a great job. Some have not done a great job. But there's been this kind of, hey, you know what? We're going to ignore the media. We never get a fair shake on the media. Therefore, we're going to leave it alone and just kind of have our own information channel for people to find. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on the Second Amendment and advocates and getting the message out when it comes to national media and local media?
Well, I still think we have to reach out. Second Amendment Foundation does certainly. Professor John Lott has had good luck doing so. It's an uphill fight, but if you keep looking, you'll find people who are open-minded enough to listen to us.
I think you're right. Do you think that I think there are some obviously, slanted or biased folks in the media. I mean, that's not, that's not news. That's not a huge, declaration. But the non-op-ed folks. I mean, there are some op-ed shows where they're supposed to be giving their opinion and. They're obviously biased, but the actual anchors, the people that are really just there to cover the news, I don't think that they're so much pro or against guns or in general. They're really just trying to be dramatic, and they're looking for friction. They're looking for two sides of a story that where there's a lot of friction. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's true, but at the same time, if we are upfront with them, if we're open with them, if we can give them good, strong sound bites that make sense, we can still make our points with the media.
I agree, and that the knowing what they need and knowing how to deliver is crucial. And the sound bite part is exactly right. If you can, give little bites, little pieces, phrases, of good and accurate information where. You're explaining something in a simple way to kind of the layman, people that don't go to the range every weekend.
Well, sure. So something that makes them think. One thing I've found over the years as an expert witness in court that also works, I think, with the media is with the general public, the great majority of people who are in the middle and are not committed on this issue either way. if we can show them some allegory, some comparison of what we do with firearms to something they're already doing in daily life, it kind of rings a bell. For example, I've had really good luck explaining that the defensive firearm is a direct analog to a fire extinguisher. Now, if you went back an old person's lifetime to, let's say, mid-20th century, nobody had fire extinguishers in their homes. They might be required to be in places of business open to the public. I remember my dad did. And if you remember back then, there were these gigantic brass and copper tubes, they're heavy as hell, as I recall, with a hose on them, and you had to take them down to the local fire station every year to get them recharged. And I remember as a little boy going down with my dad to do that for the first time. And all the firefighters patting him on the back because he was the only one in the neighborhood who, except for the firefighters themselves, who kept one at home. Now, fast forward to today. You won't find a home where there's not at least one fire extinguisher in the kitchen. Most people have them in their cars now as well. And the reason is that, the public woke up to the facts of the time-space continuum related to an emergency. Now, whether it's the emergency medical service, the fire department, or the police department, when you have a life-threatening crisis, you have to survive long enough to call it in. Dispatch has to reach out to the appropriate agency, and the appropriate people have to be mobilized and cover the distance to get there. And the different studies show probably a general average of about 11 minutes emergency response time nationwide. Now, people figured out if that fire blooms on the kitchen stove, if it's going to take 11 minutes for the professionals to address it, by that time the entire home is involved, and probably anyone inside is dead of thermal burns or smoke inhalation. But if there's a fire extinguisher right there in an instant, you can kill the thing in its nest, kill it right there on the stove, and all you've lost is a few $100 in smoke damage, and perhaps you need a new appliance. The defensive firearm is exactly the same analog. Now, it's an emergency safety rescue tool for first responders. And we have to remind the public, they call police and firefighters and paramedics the first responders. No, they're the first government first responders, the .gov first responders. In a real-world emergency crisis, the first responder is the citizen who is there when the deadly danger immediately breaks out. And as soon as we can smother that fire on the stove, the better it's going to be. As soon as the individual can stop the threat of, let's say, the mass murderer with a deadly weapon, the home invader who's kicking down the door with a deadly weapon, the more innocent life is going to be saved. People click with that.
Yeah, I was going to say,
wait a minute, I'm already doing half of what you're talking about. I understand the parallel. I get it now.
And I've noticed more and more in the last few years, especially let's say 5 years, that the fire extinguisher comparison is getting a lot more popular. Whereas I think 15 years ago, people were talking about cars. They'd compare guns with cars, and what happens if you don't have a strong comparison, if you don't have an accurate analogy, I guess, is people get really, really hung up on the differences. If there are too many differences between the two, they get really hung up on the differences rather than paying attention to the point you're trying to make. And I think there are far fewer differences when you're comparing a fire extinguisher with a firearm. So I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a smart move.
Well, we all do, here, gee, you register your cars, why won't you register your guns?
Yeah.
And my answer is twofold. First, there is no well-orchestrated movement trying to confiscate our automobiles.
Yeah.
But second, you're saying you want to register the firearms as a crime prevention measure. Yes, of course. And I asked them, do you realize the only people who would not have to register the firearms are the convicted felons? Look it up. For many, many years, the Supreme Court decision in Haynes, Haynes, if you want to look it up, Haynes versus United States, said you could not punish the convicted criminal, the felon, for not registering his firearm because doing so would violate his Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination.
Interesting.
And people don't realize it. They look it up, and they realize the other side has been lied to. Now, we're dealing with the court of public opinion as both a police officer and an expert witness for the courts. I've had to deal with that jury, with the typical jury, but I also try to look at what I call the final jury, the jury of public opinion. My definition of a jury is it's a 12-headed creature. If you add up all their IQs, they're going to come to way over 1,200. You'll have centuries of combined life experience, but above all, you'll have 12 separately functioning BS detectors. And you ask anyone who's ever done jury duty, if one side of the case lied to you when you caught them in the lie, did you believe another word they had to say? And the answer universally is no.
Interesting.
If we can make the public themselves catch the other side in their lies, that is incredibly powerful.
That's interesting. Well, that's why the registration thing. I mean, that's the movie Shawshank Redemption is probably one of the strongest pro-gun movies out there, because Andy Dufresne would not have done time as an innocent man had he not had a gun registered to him, right? So that's I don't know how many minds that's gonna change, but it's a pretty important point. Okay, so talk about some of the things that Second Amendment Foundation has coming up. What's the emphasis going forward, especially with the New York case? Something's going to happen in June regarding Kerry and the New York case. What's
well, any of us who followed the arguments and listened to the questions of the justices, it's clear that our side won the argument. If you look at it ethically, if you look at it just as a judge of debates, a judge of the facts, our side won. I am guardedly optimistic, which is as optimistic as I ever get. But
well, let's talk. I'll tell you what, Massad. Let's go to a commercial break, and then I really want to talk about this on the other side of the break. Okay?
Hey, does selling your home feel overwhelming? Well, it doesn't have to be that way if you use Scott Vinson from Cold Wall Banker Royal Realty. Scott Vinson is the perfect guide to help you sell or buy your home. Scott has also been has been a San Diego County gun owner board member from the start. So if you're moving, let a fellow Second Amendment supporter and real estate broker, Scott Vinson, help you sell your home and find you a new home anywhere in the United States. Give him a call at 619-948-2459. Tell him you heard about him on Gun Owners Radio. That's Scott at 619-948-2459. Or you can go online to scottvinson.com. That's VINSON.
All right, we're talking to living legend Massad Ayoob, and we were just talking about the New York case that went to the Supreme Court. It is a carry case, so it has to do with your right to bear arms, whereas the Heller versus D.C. case back in 2008 really had to do with your right to keep arms. And so this is a carry case that we hope will frankly change the world. Honestly, I don't think that's hyperbole, Massad. Do you?
No, I don't at all. This is an equal rights case. If we go back and we look at history, in the beginning of this country, one did not need a permit to carry a firearm if one was legal to own one. Come forward into mid-19th century, after the Civil War, during Reconstruction, that was when we really saw the rise of the carry permit system. Primarily in the southern states. It was as if they were saying, oh my God, the blacks that we've oppressed are going to be free. We can't let them run around with guns because, they might take revenge for all that we've done to them. So we'll pass laws that you have to have a permit to carry a gun, and we'll make sure we elect a sheriff to issue the permits who only issue them to us. And if you actually look at the history of it, that was absolutely the core of it.
Yeah.
Fast forward to 1911, the Sullivan Act in New York, which is the cornerstone of the litigation we're talking about. Big Tim Sullivan passed that law in large part to disarm Italians, Irish, the immigrant poor that they saw coming into the city. Now, if you go back to, again, mid-20th century, by that time, there was only one state that was a vestige of original America, Vermont, that never required a permit to carry a gun in public. They simply forbade the practice, to convicted felons and those who'd been determined to be, diagnosed as mentally incompetent. Now, most states back at that time, with a few exceptions, the state of Washington and the state of New Hampshire, were may issue, meaning that the law allowed the appointing authority great discretion as to whom they would issue the permits. And not entirely, but for the most part, and very much in New York State, and most particularly in New York City, may issue became a code for we'll give you the permit if you're white, rich, male, and politically connected. New York Penal Code 265 allowed the issuing authority to establish the criteria and need. And the typically in New York City, for most of the time, you go to one police plaza, New York City Police Headquarters, and you would have to show that at least once a week you carried $5,000 in cash, negotiable security, et cetera, et cetera. The rich could get it, the poor could not. If you are white, male, rich, and politically connected, you would get the permit. Over the years, we have seen a huge sea change in this, and honestly, fellas, I think it is the greatest victory for our side in the overall picture of this fight. You go back from mid-20th century to today. Prior to 1988, there were at least 7 states where there was no provision for the ordinary person to get a license to carry a concealed gun. Today, there are none. Even the toughest states at least have some legal provision on the books, such as Hawaii, for example, or Maryland. Only a handful of states then were may issue. Today, the vast majority are. Only the one state, Vermont, had what many now call constitutional carry. Today, we are past 20 states where you do not need a permit to carry a gun. They follow that Vermont model. And the reason I like the term Vermont model, if you look over history, the state of Vermont has had a lower rate of violent crime per capita than any other, more often than any other state. So I think we've made great advances on the concealed carry front. And again, I am guardedly optimistic that when the Supreme Court comes in with their decision, we will have had a huge victory in that.
I hope so. You were talking just at the beginning of what you were just saying was about how obviously it has racist roots, and of course they were worried that the blacks that were slaves were going to have some kind of uprising and take some revenge against them. And it got me thinking. The first time I'd ever really thought about this, it's really kind of amazing that didn't happen. There really aren't. There may have been some skirmishes or whatever here and there, but there really wasn't a big uprising of former slaves against, the government or against, the people that were enslaving them, which I think is a huge testimony to the Americans that were set free, that were former slaves. I don't know. It seems pretty amazing.
It's testimony to the trustworthiness and responsibility of the average American. Now, we've seen in more modern times exactly the same thing every time shell-issue concealed carry has passed, or permitless carry. The other side said there'll be blood in the streets, they'll be shooting each other over parking spaces, and every single time that failed to materialize. And that came out, if you followed the arguments in the Supreme Court in the case we're discussing now, and was very powerfully delivered by our side.
It was. In fact, they used San Diego. San Diego was one of the examples they used because basically before 2017, you really, in effect, you really couldn't get a CCW in San Diego. And after 2017, we pressured the sheriff, and now you can get a CCW. And the attorney actually talked about San Diego specifically, saying that, hey, it's actually been a very successful program. And in fact, the same sheriff that was stopping CCWs from happening is now, he just stepped down a couple weeks ago, but is very proud of his CCW program. It's really, really, truly. And in fact, this is the first election in, I think, San Diego history, as near as I can find, that every major candidate who's running for sheriff is not only pro-CCW, but they're kind of tripping all over themselves to get the CCW vote. So it's
wonderful, and it shows just how effective San Diego gun owners have been. That group is a shining light for gun owners' civil rights nationwide.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. That's huge. But it's also, I think it shows not just a legal change or maybe a public policy change, but a cultural change. You know, there's been an actual change in culture in San Diego, which I think if you get the right policies in place and you take the right steps to do that, that you'll actually have a cultural change. People will feel more comfortable about the idea of, you know, having their fire extinguisher, you know, when they leave the house.
A threat extinguisher, as it were.
Threat extinguisher? I like that. So let me ask you this. I had I don't know, I feel like this, just switching gears a little bit, going to training. It feels like to me that there are two kinds of gun people. There are those that train and those that do not train. And the ones that train, I feel is it controversial or inaccurate to say that the ones that train are probably overtrained? That they probably it's too much, too specific situations. They're training for situations they aren't even realistic. They'll never happen, and that those who aren't training, you know, are not training at all. Like they really, you know, there's a need for, and there's this huge chasm in between the two. Am I way off?
Yes, and if I was writing a response to an interrogator, I'd say agreed in part, denied in part. Certainly, I advocate training. Training is what I do for a living, so take that from whence it comes. The person who's trained in any particular instrument or any particular protocol for dealing with crisis will naturally have an advantage in dealing with it over someone who is not. Overtrained, I would not use that term. In fact, I'm finding it used in a controversial way in our business. Some of the trainers use the word overtrain to describe having something so drilled into you that you can do it automatic pilot, like, you know, blocking a punch or drawing a pistol. And overtraining is not the word I'd use. I would say simply you have achieved unconscious competence, the ability to perform the task without having to think about it. I do feel a lot of people train for things that are not going to happen to them. I see some courses that are, it's like you're training Marines for house-to-house combat in Fallujah or something. And that's simply not something we'll be doing in this country. I joke with people, and I hope it's going to stay a joke, that to take one of my classes, you've got to pass a one-question test. The TV show Walking Dead is A, a television fantasy, B, a documentary, C, a training film. If you answer anything but A, I'm not going to let you take the class.
See, now I refer to the movie Red Dawn as a documentary, so maybe that's. I'm not sure you'd let me in your class then.
Well, so long as your tongue stays in your cheek, I'll let you.
Well, I guess my point is, I'm certainly not criticizing. If you want to take high-level training as a civilian, go for it. I'm certainly not criticizing, and I am maybe kind of criticizing people that don't take any training at all. But I'm trying to figure out, how do we just bring up the average? You know, how do we get more people to take more functional training? You know,
I think by doing it one-on-one. I tell all my students, look, most you all know people who are armed citizens or are considering becoming so. They can't afford the $1,000 tuition or for a 2-day class, even the $500 tuition that I charge. A whole lot of the folks who need it most, the poorer half of America who are more at risk, if we can reach out to them one-on-one, the people you know, budget a day to take them to a range. Budget a day to bring them over to your house, review some videos or even some free stuff on YouTube that you've vetted and you know it's the real deal, not BS.
Yeah.
Answer their questions. Take them to the range. Show them basic firearm safety hands-on, particularly with the gun that they own.
All right, sir. Well, that was awesome as usual. Can't wait for the next time you call in. How do people follow you, sir?
Well, I have a blog at backwoodshome.com. My training school we teach around the country, including California, is MassadAyoobGroup.com. That's MassadAyoob.com. My work appears in every issue of Guns Magazine, American Handgunner Magazine, and Combat Handguns Magazine, among others. And a lot of that is available online at gunsmagazine.com, backwoodshome.com, as I said, and AmericanHandgunner.com, and TacticalLife.com.
All right. Very good. Look forward to interviewing you again down the road, sir. Take care.
Well,
Folks.
thank you, and keep up the great work you've been doing.
All right, folks. You know, most companies waste a lot of money on marketing. Well, the reason why is because they don't have a clear message. You're wasting money, or if you don't have a clear message. So Sage Tree gets it. Since 2005, Sage Tree has been helping companies connect with customers here in the San Diego and across the nation. Contact them today to get a better return on your investment from your marketing dollars. Go to sagetree.com to learn a whole lot more.
I didn't get to say TBD.
Yeah, I know.
Look forward to that.
I thought I'd give you a break.
Sorry, Joe. Hey, so we're going to talk to an interesting guy. He's a buddy of mine, Alan Chandler. He's with Lone Star Firearms Defense. That's how you have to say it. Alan, are you there?
I am. How are you doing today, Michael?
Good, man. I'm doing really well. You have to say it that way, right? You have to Lone Star. Don't you have to kind of, I don't know if that's.
You can say it in your life as long as you realize we're priority the Second Amendment every time you say that word.
There you go.
Lone Star Firearm Defense. Yeah, we're here to help.
So Alan
Yeah,
is Alan's a firearms. He's an attorney. Tell him a little bit about your background.
Okay, so I'm an attorney, 35 years.
Yep.
I'm licensed in California and Texas. I served 20 years in the military as an Army attorney and a field artillery officer. I ran the Army's criminal law division. I ran the Army's criminal appellate division. I did that for 20 years, 1 month, and 6 days, and then I left the service and became a prosecutor in Dallas County. I did that. I'm a defense counsel. I've traveled to 20 states giving classes on legal self-defense, and I like the fact that you guys are listening here in San Diego and that you guys are putting out the word that we need to talk about what our rights are and protect those. And so we support that.
Nice. And what made you start Lone Star Firearm Defense?
Well, at the time we started it, a lot of rangers were reaching out and saying, hey, we've got a lot of folks who are new to guns. A lot of people signed up over the last couple of years, and they don't really get the third part of knowing what to do with a firearm. The first part, of course, is figuring how it functions and sending rounds down range. And the second part is maybe, if you're lucky, how to clean it. But nobody really talks about what happens if you actually use it to defend yourself, to protect yourself. And that's really important. Your legal self-defense is equally important based on the current climate and condition we have here in the United States. It's equally important to defending your life, defending your finances, and making sure that you don't go to jail for a lawful shooting.
Yeah. So in essence, what your services are is it's a like a legal defense insurance. I know it's not technically insurance, but the idea is that if you get into any kind of self-defense situation and you need an attorney, you guys will, if you're a member of Lone Star, you guys will defend them, find the attorney, get them out of jail, do everything they need to restore their life, basically, right? Is that fairly accurate?
It's pretty accurate, yes. We started as a Second Amendment company just to make sure that we put the word out. That's why we give these classes.
Yeah.
And then if you become a member and you support the Second Amendment, and we want you to join Lone Star, then as an additional benefit of supporting the Second Amendment, we give you an attorney, basically. We provide you with a hotline number so that 24/7 you can call if you're in an emergency and get an attorney on the phone. We think that's super important.
Which is awesome, and I really appreciate it. And Alan, I've known you for years now, and I can't say enough good about you and your dedication, and it's very much appreciated. Now, you and I had a conversation I wanted to touch on the air here. You and I had a conversation about a month ago or so, where I was asking your opinion on the Rittenhouse case, and basically I made some comment of like, oh my gosh, the prosecutor really dropped the ball. He really messed this up. And you had a very interesting take on it. Do you remember the way you explained it to me, why he did what he did?
I think we were talking about him pointing the weapon at the jury, right?
Pointing the weapon at the jury, and just kind of there were a bunch of bumbling. I mean, for lack of a better term, bunch of bumbling and just kind of outrageous, weird behavior and claims. But yeah, one of the things was he pointed the AR at the jury, muzzled the entire jury. But that's just one of like 10 weird things that he did. And I thought, man, how much stupider could this guy get? How much more incompetent could he get? But then you had a very interesting take on why he did what he did.
Yeah, if a prosecutor is going to lose a case, and they're really impassioned about it, right? This is something they really truly believe in, and they in the middle of the trial realize we're in deep doo-doo. Some of them, and not the good ones, but some of them will actually tube the case, and so they'll go for a mistrial. So what he was doing with these outrageous comments, and his co-counsel also, and then pointing the weapon at the jury with the finger on the trigger, that can only be designed to get the judge to get a mistrial. And if you get a mistrial, then it's like, oh, we'll dismiss the jury, we'll reconvene, and we'll decide whether to do another trial. In that particular situation, the prosecution's like, okay, we learned a lot of things from the defense during their presentation, and we saw the way they attacked their witnesses. So we get to scrub all of that, start over again. Now we know what the defense is up to, and we can attack their case through our case in chief. So it's my belief he knew he was going to lose, and he was becoming more and more outrageous to see if he could get a mistrial. And defense did not bite on that.
Our producer Rich is nodding his head in a very, this is very, very interesting. I think it is. I thought it was fascinating. Joe, do you ever anything like that ever cross your mind? I think it's really interesting. It's an interesting theory.
Yeah, and I'd seen that before, and that I thought that was a real good theory because you can't explain that because obviously the prosecutor was not a rookie, he was not a beginner, he knew better than that. And I think the judge even said that you know better than to be doing these things. And that was, I'd heard that was the theory before, too. They were going for the mistrial.
So, Alan, do you think the judge, well, it sounds like do you think the judge was well aware? He knew exactly what this guy was trying to do, and do you think the judge handled it well?
Oh, yeah. Both. I think the judge handled it very well. He wasn't going to do a mistrial. He's like, we're not going to do this over again. This is ridiculous. This guy, and through the testimony that came out in the government's case in chief, the state's case in chief, you could see that this is a guy who lawfully defended himself. I mean, he wasn't the instigator of this. He was leaving. The crowd followed him. All those things that point in the direction of he wasn't the instigator of the situation. He was simply someone who was leaving. They decided, hey, we can take the kid out. So that kind of came out through the testimony. I didn't watch every day like many people did because, I have a job and I'm running around doing things. But I did look at highlights, and it's evident that the judge had lost patience with the prosecutor. That he didn't enjoy the system, and he felt that in his heart that Kyle was innocent.
And you think it's just as simple? The prosecutor just thought, you know what? Let's scrap this. Try again a second time. Maybe we'll do better. Or do you think is there any other, motivation? Would he have, made more money, or is he going to be able to write a book because of it, or he wanted more fame, or no? He just simply he thought, we're not doing well. Let's try again.
Ask anybody that's associated with any high-level case if they're going to write a book or not. We have to leave that one alone. But usually you write them if you win, right? OJ is the only one where you get to write a lot of books if you lose. No, a prosecutor is not going to make any more money regardless of the outcome. The only way they're going to make extra money is to leave the prosecution's office, leave the state's office, and then become a civilian attorney, and then write a book deal or do whatever else. The typical prosecutor, though, if you look at it across the country, the typical prosecutor is a graduate from law school and they become a prosecutor right away. It's not like they go do other things and then become a prosecutor. Typically, in most states that I've been in, and it's about 20 now, the prosecutor graduates from law school, gets a job at the DA's office because they did really well. They're very selective about these sort of folks that they bring in, and they have like zero life experiences. And all their experiences are brought in the next 3 to 5 years that they're at the DA's office. A prosecutor does not normally stay more than 5 years at a DA's office. And they do that for a variety of reasons. Sometimes they leave because there's a new election and there's a new DA. And like in the state of Texas, you can fire everybody who's there and rehire everybody else, and get your own crew in there. So every political election, every 4 years or so, you could have all new prosecutors. Now, the lower level prosecutors doesn't really affect. If you're only there a year or two and you're not, promoting or trying to get somebody to defeat your boss, you can stay. But those who've been there 5, 10, 15 years are up on the chopping block if the new DA is elected.
It's a whole political thing.
DAs.
Now,
it can be not all states, but a lot of them, yes.
Now we have a guy who's running for sheriff who is he was actually a prosecutor for the city attorney in San Diego. They have certain ability to prosecute on non-felony and some other things. And he is a huge proponent of gun violence restraining orders. Do you want to touch on gun violence restraining orders and tell me what you guys think of them? Well, are there problems? Do you love them? Do you hate them? What are your thoughts on gun violence restraining orders?
Anything that is an inhibition against someone's ability to defend themselves, I am highly against. Okay? But let's talk a little bit about that. 18 USC, so 18 United States Code 922G, basically talks about folks who are not allowed to have firearms. And so if you're not allowed to have a firearm, you're not allowed to purchase them, and then you're not allowed to have them if you meet certain criteria. And some of them we talk about all the time, crime punishable by a term exceeding 1 year, so you're convicted of a felony basically, fugitive from justice, interference, addicted to a controlled substance, mental defect, there's a whole list. Illegally here in the U.S., dishonorable discharge, et cetera, et cetera. You get down to about the ninth one, and it says, misdemeanor crime with domestic violence. All right? So a few years ago, I'm dating myself because I've been doing this 35 years, but so maybe 20 years ago, we started looking at victims of domestic violence. And we said, well, maybe there's something we can do about this. You'll see people that who are firearms owners, but, a lot of people own firearms, who may or may not be branded as somebody who's a domestic violence person.
Alan, I'll tell you what, we want to have you wrap it up on the other side of the break. Is that okay?
That sounds great.
All right, sit tight.
All right, hey folks, PRMI Mortgage. Man, I tell you, if you're in the military and if you're looking for help for a VA loan, have I got the guy for you? Chris is absolutely amazing. If you're looking to refi, buy, maybe you're considering a reverse mortgage, just give our guy a call. Call Chris Wiley at PRMI Mortgage. For nearly 25 years, Chris has been helping local San Diegans with all their mortgage needs. Give Chris Wiley a call at 619-722-1303 or just go to primeres.com/Alpine.
Okay, we're talking to Alan Chandler, who's an attorney, and he's with Lone Star Firearm Defense. And we were just talking about gun violence restraining orders when we went to break. So let's take a step back and talk a little bit more about. Let's kind of start from the beginning with gun violence restraining orders. So you said you're against anything that prevents somebody from defending themselves. So right, did I paraphrase that? Okay.
It does.
Okay.
But let's define it for folks, because a lot of people don't really understand what is a gun violence restraining order, right? It's a court order that prohibits somebody from having a gun, ammo, or magazines. You know how you store it, right? So it's basically going to take away your right to defend yourself with your firearm. They're going to take all your firearms. A gun violence restraining order says you can't possess a gun, ammo, magazines. You can't buy a gun, ammo, or magazines. And any you have to turn in your guns, ammo, and magazines to the police. Or in some cases, they're like, we're going to have you sell them to a store or a licensed gun dealer, or you can actually go to a range and or a licensed store or gun dealer, and you can basically put them away that you can't have contact with them. But maybe later when the restraining order is lifted, you can get that. But when California talks about it, they don't talk about temporarily giving up your weapons. They want you to either sell it or dispose of them. And
the people that can issue, the people that can initiate, is that the right? Tell me if I'm using the right terminology. But the people that can make one of these gun violence restraining orders happen is part of the problem. It can be your neighbor, your coworker, your kid's school teacher. It's pretty wide open, right?
Correct. The whole idea initially was, hey, you've got somebody in a domestic violence situation, for example, a husband and a wife, and one of them has a gun and is angry enough about the situation that they're going to come gun down the spouse. And so it's like, we have to satisfy that. Well, there are already laws in place that take care of that. I just talked about how you can't have a gun if you've got all these disorders, right? Or if you're a felon, or so there's 9 things under 18 USC 922G. The federal and then the state also has the same rules. Like, we're going to follow the feds, and we're going to also maybe create a few of our own. But the bottom line is we've already got rules that can take that away. You don't need an additional rule like these gun violence restraining orders to take guns away from folks. And like you said, anybody, I can call up. If I'm a registered nurse in certain states, I can actually have you committed for 72 hours without even you doing anything about it. They'll literally come out, commit you, and at the end of 72 hours, you get a quick hearing to decide if they want to keep you. Well, this is kind of in that same vein, except it's going to be a lot longer than that. You have to get a court order. So somebody's got to initiate the process, and then the court's got to review it. All right. So that also sounds like it's pretty good. The court's going to review it. But the problem is anybody can do it. So initially, the first step is before the court can review it, they're going to take them. And once taken, then you got to fight pretty much to get it back. And that's not how it works in America.
And that's the second important point. The first is that any old jerky can initiate this thing. Anybody that's got a bone to pick, anybody that's mad at you, anybody that's disagrees with you politically, anybody can initiate this thing. The second bad part is that your guns, your property, your self-defense gets taken away before you go to court.
Correct.
So it's due process is after. They take everything, and then you go through due process.
Right, and I can tell you by defending folks who have defended themselves with firearms, and once the state gets a hold of your weapon, they're reticent to give it back. So even if they clear you, they're like, well, you didn't do it, you did it in self-defense or whatever else, we're still not going to give you your weapon back. We're going to destroy it. And so that's a real problem, particularly if you invest a lot of money in firearms. But the way they do it is what's insidious, right? They don't say you're violent. They put out there are ways to prevent gun violence. This is one of our ways to prevent gun violence. Well, it's not the gun that's doing the violence, right? If you got a violent individual, there are crimes and penalties and laws that will do something with that potentially violent individual, right? They'll argue, oh, well, it happens after the fact. Well, you can identify up front, if there are people who have issues. And you don't have to go in the middle of the night or early in the morning, 2 o'clock, and raid the house and take all the weapons and then send the guy to court to have to try to get them back. That's ridiculous. It's not preventing gun violence because guns don't commit violence. It's the person. So that's my first 2 takes on it. The other thing that I don't like, and I'm seeing across the country, are people who they'll take their kids, for example, in to get them treated, or you go to the hospital for whatever, and you fill out these forms, and on the form it says, does mommy and daddy have a gun at their house? Okay.
Yeah.
So doctors, dentists, and people, they're starting to be very intrusive and trying to find out, who has a gun, where they have them, and those kind of things. So California is very intrusive in this particular situation. I don't like gun violence restraining orders. I do like restraining orders in a certain situation, but it doesn't mean you take all your weapons first.
Well, part of one of the things I'm pointing out, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. You're smarter than I am. You're an attorney. You stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
You're very smart.
I get by on my good looks. We all know that. I mean, it's just let's just admit it. But
Alan,
it's not a rumor.
Alan,
It's not a rumor.
Alan,
Yes, sir.
he likes spaghetti from Denny's.
I do.
Who doesn't?
Jeez
There you go.
Louise.
Finally, an ally.
Come
So-
on, that's nectar of the gods.
But one of the problems is when they first came up with this idea to pass this law to invent gun violence restraining orders, they said, look, we're only going to use these in specialized cases. This is just going to be a preventative measure in certain situations, blah, 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 blah. And now it's standard practice in many, many, many departments. So no matter if there's a need for a gun violence restraining order or not, they just issue them.
How do you get rid of it?
How do we get rid of gun violence restraining orders?
Yeah.
Well, we'd have to undo the law. We have to get the right people elected and say, hey, you know what? We're getting rid of this law.
But it could be done.
Absolutely.
Oh,
And that's a
absolutely.
goal of ours.
Yep. No, it's real important not to have these kind of things. There's so many other, like I said, there's so many other laws in place that that can handle these type of situations. You have to create a law on top of a law on top of a law. Because like Michael just said, and he's accurate in this, so that's another reason why we know he's very, very smart. But once you start heading down the slippery slope, then it's like, oh, well, the gun commits violence. Let's just take away the guns at all. Now we don't need necessarily a gun restraining order. We can just say, well, we don't like our neighbor, and he worries me. So let's just take whatever he has, and then where do we stop? We're going to take the kitchen knives away from somebody. We're going to take away your car. Well, you can't drive. You might plow that into your spouse or something. I mean, if there's a way to injure someone, there are a lot of creative ways to do that. You don't need firearms. But there are a lot of laws in the books. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm getting on a roll.
No, you're good.
No, that was great. This is Joe. Yeah, quick question. You were talking about, California being much more intrusive, which we all know that now. But there's a legislator up there, I want to say Petrolino, was that the guy's name? That's coming out with legislation to require parents to report gun ownership to schools and school boards if they have their kids in school. Have you run into that, or have you heard about that one?
We've not had that in Texas, and I'm just new to some of these wonderful things you guys are doing in California.
Because
I am a California, Texas attorney, but I live in Texas right now.
Yeah, and that
So
kind
I
of
am
thing.
seeing-
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that kind of thing too is like you're saying. Once you force people to disclose this stuff, now again is you're becoming ripe for the gun violence restraining order or whatever, because there's no reason for people to know that information yet. In California, we see this over and over again where they try to do that. There was another one just passed recently. Where they're going to release that kind of information to researchers, and that's going to get spread out there all over the place too.
No, it's ridiculous. Okay, I'll give you a quick anecdote if you have time for it. We had kids come over to the house to stay with my son when he was 10 or 12 years old, and we're in Texas, and we're in the Dallas area, and typically everybody has a firearm, right? But they're locked up around kids. Every hour, this kid's mother was calling and saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?" And so finally we're like, why are you calling? He's like, well, the son says, why are you calling? Well, Mr. Chandler does a lot of things with guns.
Oh, geez. That's Texas.
And then we go like, where are you guys coming from? We just moved here from California. I'm like, great.
Thanks, Alan.
No, the guns are locked up around kids. We make sure everybody knows what safeties are and those type of things. I mean, it's about educating people. That's why I like what you guys are doing on the radio.
There you go. Give your website, Alan.
Give out your website, because we got to go.
LoneStarFirearmDefense.com.
All right.
LoneStarFirearmDefense.com. You guys have a wonderful evening.
And you need to get a radio show, but that's another story.
Y'all take care.
All right, buddy. All right, folks. Hey, welcome back. This is Gun Owners Radio, FM 96.1, AM 1170.
The Answer.
Friend of the show, John Petrolino, is next.
But first, clean and lube, protect your guns faster and easier with Seal One. Seal One CLP Plus is also natural, non-toxic, environmentally friendly, and if you're tired of smelling like a gas station after cleaning your gun, you need to try Seal One. Ask for it by name at your local gun shop. If they don't have it, ask them why. Clean your gun faster and better with Seal One.
Action Jackson. Do you know my buddy, John Petrolino? Do you know that guy yet?
I will right now.
That's exactly right. You don't read his column yet?
And
So he's a Second Amendment author. So he writes a bunch of stories about the Second Amendment and what's going on in different court cases. And he's a merchant marine, and he's an awesome guy. He's a really good. He's an author. He wrote a book on how to on like basic firearms. It's almost like a manual, like a firearms manual. Like how do you shoot a gun? What's the difference between a revolver and everything? It's kind of neat.
I have to catch up on these books.
I know, right? So John Petrolino is our guest. How are you, my friend?
Hello, Michael. How are you? Hello, Joe, Dave, Action Jackson, everybody. Hello.
Hey.
Hey, good to have you back, John. Did you bring Charlie with you? I thought Charlie was going to be here today.
I did not bring Charlie, but he is tuning in right now.
Right.
So we could give Charlie a big old shout out.
Now, John, I heard a rumor about you and Charlie.
Well, a lot of people talk about me and Charlie.
No. That's not that rumor. I heard that you two were going to come out to Gun Prom this year. Is that accurate?
What I can say right now is there's going to be a planning board meeting on Tuesday evening with me, Charlie, and Mrs. Petrolino.
Yeah.
Ironing out the finer details about this trip to California that we'll be trying to pull off.
Joe, I have this image of the two of them in like this wacky, road trip, where, hilarity ensues, and I don't know, maybe they have to save a town in trouble on the way or something.
It's a 4-day long Charlie video. It'd be great.
In an 87 Buick estate wagon.
Exactly. Well, that's on day one, but then that breaks down. Then they got to go with like some kind of,
they got to go in an airplane and pay extra to go faster.
Exactly.
Well, I hope they make it out here because they're my only 2 celebrity subscribers on my Get a Grip site there.
Is that the only 2 you have?
2 celebrities, yeah.
Oh.
I mean, more celebrities like
I
those
thought all
guys.
your people were celebrities.
No, but it puts a lot of pressure on me now because every time I try to write something, I break out into a sweat. It's like, God, John and Charlie are reading this. What am I going to do?
You got to up your game, Joe.
It's a lot of pressure now that it didn't used to be.
There you go.
Joe, you're nailing it, man. I wouldn't even worry about it. You are nailing it. I dig the work. So everybody, give Joe's work a read there. And what is it? Getagrip.substack.com.
That's the one. You say it better than I do. That's great.
Yeah, we got to get everybody out there reading Joe's stuff. It's good. I like it. So what do you got tonight for me, Michael?
Well, how do you I really like what you write. You do a great job. I enjoy your articles very, very much, and I think that you're very thorough and not just in explaining the subject, but you get really, really down into, like, you research the articles really, really well. Some of the articles are, like, you've written articles that I've been involved with, and you did better research than I learned something about what I did from you, which was really amazing. How do you what do you decide? How do you decide which articles you write?
Oh, I mean, it's just if a topic comes and hits me, and it's there for the taking, I just take it and run with it. I mean, there's this. It's really triaging out. So if there's a story that's been told 5 different times, like we're going to talk about another robbery or another shooting in Jersey. Okay. Yeah. So that's kind of boring. It's worthy to report on. Yes. But I think what you're talking about, maybe some of the work revolving around, say, trying to get a concealed carry permit and jurisdictions forcing you to get a psychological examination.
Yeah, up in Marietta. It's up in Marietta and Riverside, right?
Right. So that was something that, I took some time to write about and research. And that's the kind of stuff I really like, because there's commentary, and I don't, I enjoy writing commentary as well. But hard news like that, I mean, is, where I really like to dig in. So I actually have some stuff, coming up. I hope to get the green light in a couple of days to talk about a former court case, and maybe this individual taking a different approach to how he handles his problem. But we'll see about that. And also, Irons that have already put in the fire was recently talking about the J Factor concealed carry case in New Jersey. That's something that I wrote about. That was, hard news. And
well, you did a really good job with this guy Hemmerling that we keep talking about, the guy that wants to run for sheriff here in San Diego. I mean, you knocked that out of the park too.
John Hemmerling, yes. And here's the thing: one of his cohorts wrote an article saying that Michael Schwartz blindsided him. Well, here's the thing: I didn't blindside Hemmerling. I sent Hemmerling emails, and he had all the time in the world to think about how he wanted to speak for himself. And he, gave me his responses. So they can poo-poo as much as they want about him being blindsided. They should be well aware now that gun owners do not appreciate the tactics of which he tries to employ upon the population.
Well, not only that, but, I don't think I've said this on the air yet, but, I didn't blindside him. I actually told him, I told a go-between. They said, hey, I heard he's coming on the radio, whatever. And I said, yeah, you need to tell him that we're really going to hold him accountable for the gun violence restraining order stuff. And he said, okay, I'll talk to him. And I actually got confirmation that he knew coming in that we were going to hit him hard on the gun violence restraining order thing. And honestly, I didn't intend for that interview to be as hard-hitting until he just completely fell apart. He couldn't answer the most basic of questions. And I thought, okay, I'm going for the jugular. So in no way did I ambush him or blindside him or anything. He knew exactly what was going to happen when we came on. And by the way, he's a prosecutor. Like if I can blindside a prosecutor and take his pants down and spank him that hard, you're not really a great prosecutor. So, being blindsided. By the way, that guy that wrote that article is he's a buddy he went to law school with. So it's not like it's nobody that has any kind of credibility.
Right. And I saw that. And, the thing that bothers me about Hemmerling, even further, is he was given the opportunity to speak for all this. And the word or the phrase ex parte is mentioned, 40-something times in the statute and the explanation of the law. And he has the audacity to tell all of us and all of your listeners and everybody that's willing to listen to him that these hearings don't necessarily happen with the people not present, that they're always present, and that's wrong. They have ex parte, and people are blindsided, and when they find out about them is when the police show up and say, "Give me your guns." And for him to be a barrister or a lawyer and to sit there and lie to us like that and say that there's no such thing as ex parte with these things, I mean, come on. I mean, that's my opinion, Michael. You know?
Hey, that's four times now.
What?
Yeah.
4 times? The what?
4 times we've tromped this guy.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the show's not even over. Well, I got to tell you, this is, we were talking about the media at the beginning, and then we had Massad Ayoob, and we talked about the media with him a little bit. And this is the type of thing, this is why quality media is important, because you have guys like Hemmerling that are given false information, and they're, biased and everything. And if you're a good journalist like John Petrolino, who we're talking to here, you're holding him accountable, saying, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. What you're saying doesn't add up. What you're saying isn't true. And that's why this stuff's important, I mean, obviously John's got a bias. John's the Second Amendment guy. But he's uncovering real facts, he's making sure that to hold people accountable when they make statements.
But John says when it's right, it's right. When it's wrong, it's wrong.
I agree with that.
Right, John?
Generally speaking, I will.
Well,
I will.
Yeah. You may not even agree with it. But you'll still go the route of what's right.
Yeah, yes. And I'm not going to, and again, and I just had this conversation earlier today. I said, as long as I keep going forward and I do my absolute best and my due diligence to not do something that's wrong or immoral or fabrication of the truth. That's it,
Perfect.
And that's all we can do,
Well, and I think it's I just appreciate everything that you do. I appreciate the job you did on that very, very much. I think it's shocking, and I think it's important that people across the country see, a Republican pro-gun candidate who is not pro-gun.
Yeah.
I think there's this stereotype. You put an R in front of somebody's name, and far too many people across the country just make assumptions that they're good on guns and they believe every word they say. But here we have a quote-unquote pro-gun, quote-unquote Republican who's running for sheriff, and nobody's, nobody should make,
calling him out.
Nobody should make the mistake that this guy's pro-gun. Right. You know what I mean? How much did you get? What kind of feedback did you get on that article?
A lot of people see California and they just roll their eyes, and they're like, that's typical. I will note that I did reach out to the San Diego County Republicans, and they declined to respond to my correspondence. And I asked them for a position statement on candidates that support red flag laws, and I asked them for a position statement on concealed carry, and I did name Hemmerling, I believe by name, in this email, and they declined to comment. And those 2 individuals are named in the article. I don't remember, those guys' names. But
wow, what a bunch of cowards. Okay, so listen, the theme for the month is first contact. So when we get back, we want to ask John Petrolino, we want to ask you what your best advice to people that are interested in learning, what's your best advice for them? So when we get back from the commercial, that's what we're going to talk about.
Hey, we are very proud to partner with the National Concealed Carry Association as a 10-ring partner. NCCA exists to serve the Second Amendment community by providing a nationwide network of 2A advocates. They offer elite self-defense and concealed carry training from the nation's top instructors. They also provide rock-bottom prices on the best selection of gear and accessories. Join them today. Members get great prices and free shipping. You can learn a whole lot more by just going to nationalconcealedcarryassociation.com.
All right, we're talking to our guest, John Petrolino, who's an author and gentleman and scholar and fine judge of Scotch and possible attendee of Gun Prom in June 18th this year. We were talking about, so you're an author. I love your book. What's the name of your book?
It's called Decoding Firearms.
And how would you describe it?
It's, as the subtitle says, it's an easy to read guide on general gun safety and use. So it is a I'm not going to say fully comprehensive, like everything that you need to know is in there, but it is 266 pages of content to get you up on your feet and rolling prior to or while you're on your journey to becoming a shootist.
If you're new into shooting, and I would highly recommend this book. If you are kind of a novice and you've had a little bit of training, I would recommend this book to see if there are any holes that didn't, to fill in any holes that were left in your training. And then if you're advanced, I would recommend this book as kind of a model on how to talk to other people and how to train other people. I really think this book's good for everybody. I think if you're a gun owner of any level and have any kind of passion towards teaching or learning when it comes to firearms, I truly believe you need to buy this book. Where do they buy it, John?
You can get it off of Amazon from there. Also at the Gun for Hire range in Woodland Park, New Jersey. They sell it online through their e-commerce store if you don't want to buy from Amazon. And if you're looking for information just on it, you want to read about it, you can read about it on my website, which you can go to at www.thepenpatriot.com. I have a new URL, Mike.
Nice.
Penpatriot.com. Yep. I got that moniker from John Green, who is the head of training in Gun Owners Action League. He referred to me as the Pen Patriot, and I just took it and ran with it, and it's sticking.
I like that. The Pen Patriot. THEPEN Patriot?
The Pen Patriot.
Nice. I like that. Okay, so our theme for the month on the show is First Contact. And we're not talking about wasn't that a Jodie Foster movie? First Contact. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about that movie. We're talking about basically if you as a gun owner talking to somebody who's not a gun owner. That's your first contact with somebody who's not a gun owner. You're trying to turn them into a gun owner. Maybe they want to become a gun owner. What's your best advice? You wrote what I think is the definitive book when it comes to training manuals. What's your best advice to people that are interested in learning and taking those first steps to learn about guns and potentially owning one? What's your best advice?
Well, I would see first you have to ask that person, are they apprehensive? Some people have some real fears. They're interested, they're intrigued, but they're incredibly apprehensive because my gut reaction first thing is always to say, hey, you need to get out there, go get a class, go get training. And that might not 100% be right away. The first thing for some people might be to just take them to the range, point them at the target, and let them shoot a couple of shots and send them on their way, to just give them that taste on their lips. Because if they're apprehensive the whole time that you're trying to teach them or talk to them about the material, they might be preoccupied with some sort of a fear base. So what you need to know is know who you're talking to, know your audience, read the room.
I agree. I think that's excellent advice. And on top of that, kind of who's the guy, Joe? Who's the Wolf of Wall Street guy? What was that guy's name? Jordan, not Jordan Peterson.
You're not thinking of Gordon Gekko, right?
No, not that guy. who am I thinking of, John? Jordan.
I know.
Leo DiCaprio. That's who you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Belfort.
You need a wrecking ball, right?
Right. So he did this thing where, hey, sell me a pen. And what he was trying to do was he was looking for people who would ask, well, how long have you been in the market for a pen? What are you going to use a pen for? What kind of things do you need for a pen? He was looking for people that would kind of peel back the layers of the onion to find out, hey, what are your needs? And I think that's important too. Are people buying a gun because for defense or a hobby or hunting or, what's their motivation? Because I think too often if we assign motivation to them, if you say, get this gun because it's good for concealing, well, maybe they don't want to carry. Maybe that's not where they're at, and that can so easily intimidate and scare people away from buying the gun that they really, really want. But getting to know your audience is excellent advice.
Right. And, and again, it's taken me a while to really develop that attitude. It seems it's like a no-brainer, though. That's the thing. Because originally, I'm very training oriented. It's like you got to train, but maybe an 8-hour class or a 4-hour class might not be right for somebody's first go at just being exposed to this. Now, you've seen it, the person that does, once they have that on their mind, they're in it, and they're taking classes and they're watching the YouTube videos. And that's what some of my other advice might be, is finding quality content from quality content creators, whether it's written or it's on video online. And it's a very good way to learn, right?
I agree. I 100% agree. How much do you do a lot of training? Do you train? Do you do a lot of classes anymore, or you?
I do primarily one-on-one or 2-on-1 training with people back home is what I'm generally doing. So I do when I have people that want to train, I absolutely do classes, usually a couple a month. It's not like I have the John Petrolino Firearms Training Academy. I don't. That's my, one of my side hustles, is training. I've been doing it for a while, though, and, I enjoy it. I like working with people.
Now, we have a big how big is – I think it's huge. The case, the New York case, the Kerry case is enormous. How much is that? What do you how do you prepare for that? As an author, as someone that's trying to get some good material out there. What do you anticipate as far as some of your writing and relation to the Kerry case coming out of New York?
Some of my writing, I'm going to be writing an application to get a concealed carry permit in the state of New Jersey, Michael. That's what I'm going to be writing.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine that?
So, yeah, exactly. It's crazy. And that's where San Diego was in the Peruta days, really, if you look at it.
Yeah.
So to really wrap my head around this and writing, here's the thing. They've gone apoplectic already. So the reporting is the sky is falling and the court is compromised and all these things. And you've listened to the case. You've listened to it. I know you have.
I have.
Even some of your left of center justices asked very pointed questions that said, basically points you in the direction to say, yes, this is a constitutional right. And if we were to compare this to, say, speech, it would be abhorrent to treat it the same way. So as far as writing, it's just been actually the cup runneth over with just plenty of material to combat, and that's really what it is right now is retorting towards really bad reporting.
So, John, hey, do you if we get a good ruling out of the Supreme Court here on this case, do you see New Jersey looking at it and saying, well, okay, the Supreme Court has ruled on this, we're going to go along, we're going to do the right thing, we're going to start doing that kind of stuff? Or do you see them taking the other direction where, okay, we're going to make it as difficult as possible for people to do this, depending on what the ruling is or how they come out?
I think they're going to make it as difficult as possible, and probably change carry laws where you can't carry within 1,000 feet of a mailbox, and you can't carry within 1,000 feet of a light bulb, and that's like all of New Jersey. Like, you've got it all covered except for like the Pine Barrens, So I could see them making some laws that would be very obstructionist. I think there was a rumor that New York was looking to outlaw, and I tried to find this information, and I might have misspoke elsewhere talking about this, but I believe New York, there was somebody considering, making laws where you can't carry on public transportation, including Uber and Lyft. But don't hold my feet to that. I haven't confirmed that, but that was something I had heard from somebody. But on the other side of the coin there's rumors that New York's also hiring like 40-something more officers or something like that to process carry permits, because I think they know it's coming.
Well, who's following the laws anyway? No one follows laws anymore.
Well, nobody in power follows laws. We follow laws.
Well,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If they don't want to follow the law, even if it comes down from the Supreme Court, these states are just saying, yeah, we're just going to ignore it. We're not going to pay any attention to that.
And that's a possibility, too, and we're going to have to just cross that bridge when we come to it. I don't know. This is going to be historic.
Mm-hmm.
And the sky hasn't fallen in all these other jurisdictions that have gotten permitless carry or anything like that. And a claim that something that Cam Edwards brings up on the regular is, of all the states that have gone and loosened up the restrictions on carry and have gone permitless or, made it easier to carry for normal law-abiding citizens, none of them have turned around and said, whoa, we got to reverse this.
Yeah.
They're all like full steam ahead.
They're all proud. I know it's worked out in every situation, including in some of the smaller jurisdictions in states like California. Like Orange County, it went from, I don't know, in just a few years, they went from like 1,000 to, I think they're up to about 30,000 permits. Riverside issued 10,000 permits over the last couple of years. In every situation, it's worked out tremendously. They've literally lost. They have no ground to stand on anymore in any way. It's amazing. John, how do people find you, man?
You can check me out again at thepenpatriot.com. I'm also on Facebook /ThePenPatriot. I'm on Instagram at jpetrolino III and Twitter at John Petrolino. So look me up. If you guys got some news tips, find me and shoot me an email.
I didn't know you're on Instagram. I'm going to check you out right now.
All right. Well, hey, we live in a state where your self-defense rights are under attack. So let us be your voice to help defend and restore the Second Amendment, help spread the word about the fight. Go to the website, subscribe to our newsletter. Our content is suppressed on the major social media platforms, so we're not guaranteed to be able to keep our audience. If you get shut down, or if we get shut down, joining our newsletter allows you to stay in contact with us. So go to gunownersradio.com. That's gunownersradio.com. Click on the Join the Gun Owners Radio newsletter button, and you might win a prize.
All right. It is time for everybody's favorite segment, Stump My Nephew. Every week, my nephew calls in, and we ask him a question he's never heard before. If you send us a question that has to do with gun trivia, we will, and we use it on the air, we'll send you a hat or a shirt. And if you stump my nephew, we'll give you a special prize. Last week we stumped him, and it was a gentleman from Santee stumped him, and he got a couple tickets to Gun Prom, June 18th. So if you are interested in going to Gun Prom, either try to stump my nephew or go to gunprom.com. You can buy tickets and join us for the premier Second Amendment event all year long. All right? Sam, you there?
Yeah, how are you guys?
Good, man. Thanks for coming on the show. I think we got a good question for you. Kind of a broad question, but I think you'll be able. I think you'll nail it. So, without further ado, Action Jackson.
All right. Tim from Riverside asks, what caliber is the next generation squad weapon?
So, what caliber is the next generation squad weapon?
What was that, Tim from Riverside?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for writing in, Tim. Well, let me just answer the question first. 6.8 millimeter. Now the background. For those of you who don't know, ever since, actually even before the M16 had been adopted, the Army was trying to figure out a new infantry rifle to replace the M16. The M16 was only supposed to be an interim solution. And so the Army's latest attempt to replace now the M4, basically the same platform, is called the Next Generation Squad Weapon Program, NGSW. And they have been soliciting and testing proposals for a rifle and an automatic rifle from a handful of different manufacturers. And what the Army specified in the NGSW requirements was that they wanted a high-velocity 6.8 millimeter round. And so I believe it was SIG, Textron, and General Dynamics, though two of those might have been working together, were working on different proposals. And now it's been narrowed down to just SIG and one other one.
So exactly, the 6.8 millimeter projectile was chosen after decades of testing and evaluation showed that 5.56 millimeter lethality at mid-ranges on the battlefield was inadequate, and existing 7.62 millimeter could be outperformed by the 6.8 millimeter round and save weight for the soldier or Marine. The new caliber also gives the soldier or Marine both a rifle and automatic rifle firing the same round, both effective past the 600 meter mark of existing light calibers. So they're talking about what exactly is a squad weapon? Are you able to define what do they mean by that?
They're talking about something that's going to be widely issued to rifle squads. They're using squad weapon to differentiate from some type of more specialty armament that you would find at like the company level.
So are they basically going back and what are they doing? Are they just redesigning like an AR style or AR pattern rifle, and they're going to issue it to Marines and soldiers? Is that but in 6.8? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, as I said, there have been a few different proposals. The one Sig Sauer has submitted is basically an adaptation of their MCX platform, which is similar in some ways to the AR. It's a
piston, right? It's a piston AR, isn't it?
Yeah, it uses an external piston
rather than the blowback or whatever you call. What do they call it?
People call it DI. Other people will say, well, actually, it's an internal piston. But if you say DI, everyone knows what you mean.
So rather than DI, it's piston, which is what they say. It's more AK version. It's more. It's usually considered cleaner. It's a little more reliable, right?
It uses a short stroke gas piston, unlike the AK, but it runs cleaner, runs cooler.
Yeah.
It has some advantages in certain situations.
So they're gonna do a similar AR patterns or pattern rifle that's 6.8 millimeter. Go ahead, Joe.
So Sam, what led them to 6.8 millimeter? Like I just bought a 6.5 millimeter Creedmoor rifle, but what did they start out looking specifically for that, or they design right to that, or was that already available? How'd they get the 6.8?
Well, there are a few different ways you can get to what caliber to use. You can sort of start designing the round from a number of different starting points. But as I understand it, the Army was chasing what they call overmatch, especially with regards to engagements in Afghanistan where the distances were very long. And so there was this idea floated by really the corporate side, the manufacturers, of this idea called overmatch, where they were saying that the Army needed something that could reach out farther and give U.S. soldiers and Marines superior range over an enemy insurgent armed with something like a PKM.
What's a PKM?
It's a 7.62 by 54 belt-fed machine gun. So the idea of the 6.8 is that it'll be able to reach out far like a full power round like a 7.62, but that it will have some weight and recoil savings over something like a 7.62. Though the proposed 6.8 millimeter rounds, at least from the specs on paper, look to be just about as powerful as a 7.62 NATO. So I'm curious as to how they'll compare.
So that 6.8 millimeter round, then, that's specific to this program. That's not an existing round.
It is, right? Yes. They were designed from the ground up.
Interesting. That's good stuff. Well, it looks like someone gets a shirt or a hat, but they don't get tickets to gun prom. So, good job, Sam. Nice job,
as always.
So we were so interested in what Alan Chandler was saying with gun violence restraining orders that we skipped right over Joe, and so we wanted to circle back. Joe, what do you got coming up for us?
So, and that was okay. That was a good. The thing that Alan was talking about, is a hot subject nowadays, and I was actually really interested in hearing the rest of that. So it was good, but I didn't really get skipped over. It was more sacrifices. Yeah, this is
there
good.
You
You laid down for the cause.
But, and what I was going to talk about anyway, and I'm still working on this article, but talking about essentially tyranny, the Second Amendment, and government by consent. And what I'm talking about is, in our country, the way it's supposed to be is we have government by consent of the people. In other words, we choose these people to represent us. We send them to Sacramento. We send them to Washington. And then we consent to be governed by them, and we consent to follow their rules. And the question that I'm going to deal with in the article is it still government by consent if the people no longer have the ability to say no? So in other words, am I still giving consent if that's my only choice is to consent. I don't have the ability to say no. And tying the Second Amendment into that, the Second Amendment is essentially the ultimate ability of the people to say no to that. So that was going to be the gist, or that will be the gist of the article here. And, just looking at what's going on, say, in Canada right now with the, you have the truckers' protest and then the extreme response from the Trudeau government. And that's really pretty extreme what they're doing. It's essentially declaring martial law up there. Their rules are a little bit different. Their government's a little bit different than what we have down here. But essentially, when you're talking about going after, and those are really peaceful protesters. Those aren't mostly peaceful protesters like the BLM guys and the Antifa people.
They're actual peaceful protesters.
Yes, but then if you've seen some of the video coming out of there, I don't know if you saw the elderly woman get in the walker, get trampled by the horses, by the police.
Yeah, but they said somebody threw a bicycle at the horse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's...
I didn't see that, but they said.
And again, no, I just watched it a little while ago, and it's like, okay, is that really the response? I mean, these people really aren't... They're protesting... finally, after 2 years of having their rights just completely trashed, like you've seen all over the world, really. It's not just here.
I think it's cool. It's like an old 70s or early 80s movie, where the truckers take over and they're all fed up, and you have some weird government bad guy, in this case played by Trudeau or whatever his name is.
Yeah, well, and then the scarier part, though, is when you start seizing funds, when you start telling people that, okay, if you support these people, we're going to freeze your bank accounts, we're going to zero it out.
Scary. And we're going to euthanize your dogs if you have them in the truck.
Well, and again, we're not that far away from that kind of stuff here. So anyway, that'll be the gist of the article here eventually, the next couple of days on our site and on the getagrip.substack.com site.
All right, folks, subscribe to our show on YouTube, and when you watch the video, make sure you hit the thumb up button. And please support all our great sponsors: San Diego County Gun Owners, U.S. Law Shield, the Dillon Law Group, PRMI Mortgage, Scott Vincent, Coldwell Banker, Royal Realty, Sage G Web Development, National Concealed Carry, Seal One, and Michael Schwartz. Dave, not me, Sam the Gunman, Action Jackson, Brendan Thomas, and Joe Germisi, right here on Gun Owners Radio, FM 96.1 AM 1170.
The answer.
The answer.